to borrow tables.
Hello everybody, welcome to Paint Meetings Live. I'm your host Bill T. We're coming at you here from Clericon. We have another con goer who delightfully accepted a request for an interview here. We have Dave here at the Paint Meetings Live booth. I've played a game with Dave. It has been a lot of fun. I'm sure we'll talk just a little bit about that. There's some really cool stuff going on. Dave, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit, talk about your background, or what brought you here? Just some basic building blocks for the viewers out there.
Sure, I can totally talk about that. My name is Dave Rowlands. I've been gaming for more than 40 years, about 40 years. Definitely a fan of the old school games that you see played here, as well as pretty much anything else that somebody will run for me. And how I ended up connected to this con, honestly, I was running a game with my kids just before the pandemic hit, and it was my kids and my friends, because I only have two, not like the Dungeon Minister, who's busier than I am, and so our game ended. You know, we were running this game, and then all of a sudden everybody was sheltering in place, and our game ended. But I stumbled on the Dungeon Minister's game online, and it was kind of like, oh, it filled that gap for me in a way of the game with the kids, the family game.
Right.
And yeah, I just enjoyed it. I've been following them forever because it's just fun. Like, it's the way they play, and because playing with kids is awesome because they don't come in with the same assumptions that adults come in with, and they don't come in with the same assumptions that like really experienced gamers come with. So
they're
like,
clean slate. Yeah.
But the creative problem solving, it's completely off the wall sometimes. And you're like, yeah, that could work. Okay, roll, whatever. And this stuff just it adds to the world, and it creates these great stories afterwards that they're telling to their friends or to each other as they reminisce, and it's really wild. And then I learned, like, oh yeah, I could take different approaches. You know, I learned from my kids, and certainly from the Dungeon Minister's kids, watching them play. So yeah, then so I'm a fan. And then when he put up the 2023 Clericon, I was like, oh yeah, that's a great con to go to. It's small, you know. It's like it's a 4 or 5 hour drive. All right, you know, I can do that. I'll boot down from Sudbury and check that out. And I just had a blast last year. Got to play games that I'd never played before. I hadn't been able. It's hard to run a game that you've never played before, right? I like to play it first before I run it. Doesn't always work that way, but no, I got to play in Chris's Mortor game last year. Fantastic. He was running it again this year, and he ran some other stuff. He always pulls out all the stops. Like if you're gonna have a first game experience, definitely sign up for Chris's games, because he always has like the laminated sheets or the specialized sheets and miniatures and great maps, and like everything is well planned and fun. So although Bear, the guy who ran the game that we played in, the Heroic, that he's still in production now, he had the same, like his playtest stuff is all like really great and well set up. Do you mind?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
We'll talk about it here in a minute.
he had characters, charts, everything we needed, all the rules, just like bam, right out for us.
Right. I wanted to go ahead and say hello to Dirty Basement Terrain. He made all of the stuff on the silent auction.
Oh yeah.
Lawrence's stuff. And Lawrence, I did hear from one of the con goers here that won the spider layer in the silent auction. Said that he's got a campaign ripe and ready that they're actually going into to a village to root out spiders and goblins, and like he was so pumped that he got that piece of terrain, and he's like gonna use that in his story.
That's perfect.
Let's see here. Sorry, good to see you again, Ethan. Much appreciated for being here. Okay, kind of back to the interview now that we've a little audience interaction here.
Yeah.
What I know that Friday night you were running a game that you were developing, and it was. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and some of the
Sure.
inspiration that
Yeah.
came
Okay, so I'm in the midst of developing my Hardy Boys Mysteries game.
from the books, right? The
From the
Hardy
books.
Boys paperback kind of thing.
Well, they're hardcover.
Okay.
Yeah, the hardcovers, these oldest of the books. So the original books were written in 1927, and they recently, along with the ones written in 1928, have come into the public domain. So I had actually started working on a game set in a kind of like Hardy Boys thing, and I was going to do a lot of winking and nodding, but after it came into the public domain, I was able to just deep dive into the structures and the characterization and just the feel of kid detectives solving mysteries in Mayport. And part of the reason I love that is I have a lot of really strange connections to the Hardy Boys books, especially those original stories written by Leslie McFarlane. So the author on the covers is Franklin W. Dixon. Like everybody's like, "Ooh, Franklin W. Dixon might be the first author you ever knew about. Doesn't exist. Never was a guy." Leslie McFarlane was a journalist who actually lived in my hometown of Sudbury, but he was born in Haileybury. And another guy from Haileybury was here today, or at the con this weekend, and we were chatting about, where Leslie McFarlane's house was inside of the town that he was from. And he's like, "I've never been in the house. None of my friends ever lived there." And I was really disappointed. I'm like, "Oh, I get you." Because I used to canoe past the the cabin where Leslie McFarlane wrote those books on the shores of Ramsey Lake.
That is so cool.
Yeah,
that is really, really cool.
And my grandparents had a cottage across the lake from Leslie McFarlane, so they knew him, not like his friends or anything, they didn't play cards,
Sure.
but yeah, they knew of him,
Yeah.
and they, wave as you canoe past, that sort of thing. So, like, I could have pointed to it. It's all gone now. But yeah, I could have pointed to that cottage when it was still existing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I also worked for the Sudbury Star for a while as a freelancer. So I worked in the same newsroom as him. Not physically the same newsroom, obviously, just, I worked there in the 1990s and he worked there in the
But it was
20s.
the same place, right?
Well, not the same building, no. I think it moved around a bit.
Oh.
Yeah.
Same name, department.
Same
then?
name, yeah. Same.
Sure.
Yeah, I was a journalist, he was a journalist, so certainly, yeah. There's that weird connection.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
So, could you talk to me a little bit more about the public domain side of this? Did you have to do like some research to kind of figure out some of those what you could put in and how to?
Not much. Like, once something's
I'm not
in,
so familiar with
yeah.
public domain laws.
Once it's in the public domain, you can use it. Obviously, I can't use their logos or their trade dress. You got to be careful. But I could take their text and fully slap it right in there if I wanted to. I do quote it in the game. There's actually an existing Hardy Boys game right now, just the Hardy Boys RPG, where they reprint the second book and they include it in the rules.
Okay.
I don't think I'm gonna have room for that, just because I'm taking a different approach, and certainly what I'm doing with the game is very different from them. Theirs is more of a DM-less solo game, and like as you saw, I was running it, so it's definitely not solo.
So what makes your version of this the Hardy Boys universe? Maybe not universe, but now that I know that there's another kind of version of this, what makes yours a little bit more different? You said this one was a solo one. Is yours much more traditionally based? Do you have like stat blocks?
So, yes, it's traditional in many ways, but I tried a few systems, and I eventually settled on the Powered by the Apocalypse system. It's well tested, it uses 2 6-sided dice, which fits within the restrictions that I set for myself.
Easy for kids too.
Easy for kids, but more important, easier for older adults.
Okay. Yeah. And readily available.
Yes,
too.
yeah, you can pull them
If
out
you got
of
Monopoly, you got 2d6.
Exactly.
Let's go.
Everybody's got 1 or 2 board games in there, and they can easily access 2 6-sided dice. So there's that. There's 4 stats. There's 4 traits. So it's athletics, cheeky, cool, and sharp. And you use those to accomplish different things when things are uncertain. Most of the time, it's just a lot of back and forth because you're running around Bayport talking to people and digging up clues.
Right. Right.
But
okay.
what I do is I follow that structure of the original books because Leslie McFarlane wrote the books, but Edward Stratemeyer, the editor, the person who was publishing them, he created all the outlines. So he would create these outlines, this structure, and McFarlane just filled in the details and the characters and the character development. He did all of that, but the actual notes of the adventure that the kids went on was all prepared ahead of time by the editor. So I kind of take that approach. All of the players are ghostwriters, each with their own character, and they're all contributing to the creation of this Hardy Boys story. The editor, the person running it, is providing the structure that they're operating inside of, but other than that, they've got free reign. They can do whatever they want. They can go wherever they want. Yeah.
They're all ghostwriters.
Exactly. Because over the course of the years that Hardy Boys have existed, there's been multiple ghostwriters. They haven't all wrote at the same time. But after 1958, they started rewriting the originals, so there's been multiple ghostwriters on the same books. So you could pick up number 3, for example, and it might not be
The same
book as somebody else's number 3. Yeah, which is The Secret of the Old Mill.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So and your game right now is in pre-production.
It's in testing right now. So the adventure that I ran, the Clue in the Missing Milk, I had run before with a group back home, and then I ran it here at the con. And the feedback I've been getting, excellent feedback, and it's allowed me to further develop it so that it's easier to run. Because that's what I want for it. I want it to be super easy for anybody to run and have this experience. And the structure is important. I keep talking about it, but like every Hardy Boys book starts with some kind of crazy action moment at the beginning. So they could be almost run over by a vehicle, or they have to save somebody who's drowning, or something crazy happens and they get involved in this big action moment, and it's the thing that connects them initially to the mystery, even though they don't know what the mystery is yet.
Right.
So all the adventures, they're going to start that way, and then there's like, oh yeah, this, it gets it rolling and it gets everybody like excited, and then there's just a ton of clues, and they go where they want, and they talk to who they want to talk to, and they get clues, and the clues point in different directions. So getting a clue will point to another clue, and if they get stalled, the system's really good at having what they call moves for the person running it to introduce information to the characters. So
kind of like scene transitions.
More like in the original books, there was often someone else would have a break in the case and they'd hear about it.
Yeah.
So like it was really often parallel to a case that their dad, famous detective Fenton Hardy, was always working on, right? So there'd be some kind of development, or they'd hear about something or read something in the newspaper, and they'd be like, oh, this happened, well maybe that means such and such, and then all of a sudden they're rolling again. So even if they get stalled, there's mechanisms you can do, there's things you can do that are true to the original stories to get things going again. And it's not like a railroad, because I ran the same adventure for 2 different groups. They both had solved the mystery, they foiled the plot of the bad guys, but they did it in completely different ways. Like, it was wild how they got to the end, and in different timelines. Like the group on Friday night, they got it all done in like 1 day.
Wow.
Which is outrageous, because a lot of times the Hardy Boys would stop, and everything happened slowly. It happened over the course of several days because they had to engage with their normal life. They couldn't skip school or do any of that and just chase the mystery. And there's things in the game to keep them engaged with normal life as well, but they didn't have to. They were so methodical, and they were just like bang, bang, bang. They were trying to solve it before the football game that night. Like, it was wild. They were fixated on the football game. The first group hadn't really put together what happened until after the football game.
Okay.
The first time I ran it. So it was wild to see how they were like, no, this is our timeline. We got to get this done. Even though the actual timeline, the bad guys completing their plot was 2 weeks. So it was fantastic just seeing how completely different people would play it out.
Right. And I've seen that like all over the place. It seems like kind of a running thing with the convention. So just to finish up the Hardy Boys thing, you think this is going to be? Are you going to publish this somehow?
Oh, absolutely.
Are you going to Kickstarter? So what are you?
So my hope is eventually to kickstart it because I'd like to get a decent enough production run so I can have good quality. Some little books, they're well made, like this weekend on Friday I gave away a copy of The House on the Cliff, which is number 2, as a prize to the best sleuth at the table. They all voted for one gentleman to get it, and he was super excited. He was opening the wrapping and opening the twine that I had tied it up in because I wanted it to look
That
like
was
it was
that
from the
wrapped up thing in the
in the middle of the table.
I saw that. That was like,
Oh yeah, and he just
really cool.
like it was Christmas, and he's talking about how when I was a kid, I used to get these mailed to me every month. Like I got one of these every month, like the blue backed ones.
Okay.
But this was one of the tan fabric covers with the yellow spine slip covers because the blue ones never had the original stories in them for number 1 and number 2.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, how did you get that? Are
You
they
find
printed
it
out there?
Oh yeah, they're out there. Well, because so many
Well,
kids
there's
had
book
them.
collectors and stuff. I just
Yeah.
wondered if it was like
Antique shops,
Yeah.
used bookstores,
Yeah.
thrift stores. I find a lot of hard goods in thrift stores. So you can build up a collection quite easily, and there's lots of information online on how to tell an original story from a newer one, because the rewrites, they're not as good.
Okay. Okay.
But I take a cue from them for the game. So when they did the project of the rewrites, part of the reason was to compete with television and make them more faster action.
Right.
I'm not really interested in that. But the other thing they did was to remove the worst of the racial stereotypes that existed in these books, because they were written,
It's
in the 30s and 20s and 40s. And
it's almost like Song of the South from the Disney company, where they just shut it down. The only reason I was able to watch Song of the South as a kid was because my dad actually had a Korean bootleg copy with Korean
Right.
subtitles on the VHS, but
What-
they like totally stopped production. They tried to nix all of that.
It's a similar approach actually was taken, because when they rewrote the books to remove the racism, because there have been complaints, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking about it and getting rid of the racism, they just removed all ethnicity from the books. They whitewashed everything. So
Okay.
the character of Tony Prito, who was, son of Italian immigrants and had an accent,
Right.
all that was gone. He was just
Okay.
a friend with a boat.
Right.
Like that was it. It just all changed. So, but the cue I took from it was to update things. The Bayport that we play in does not have to be like the American cities or Canadian cities or wherever you're making your Bayport.
Could be Australian city.
Yeah, exactly. But it doesn't have to be in the attitudes of 1927, 1928, or the 50s, or whatever you're putting
Could
it
be
in.
1980s. Could be.
Well, yeah, but you don't have to be as racist and bigoted as that time. You can have, you can have gay and trans characters and have everything.
So it's more of you're trying to build in a module for exclusivity or not
Inclusivity, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Thanks very
taking the
much for
cue from
catching
the.
me, I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
no problem.
Yeah, but inclusivity into your game so that it
And
can
safety,
encompass,
yeah, and it's welcoming, right? Because this intellectual property has been around for almost 100 years.
Right.
So it's been in the culture forever. I had young people playing in that group who had never read a Hardy Boys story, but they knew what they were, and they had an idea of how they worked, and they kind of leaned into the Scooby-Doo aspects, and certainly that was inspired by those books. So it was easy for people to jump into the tropes, and and the archetypes, like I took them all from characters in the book. So, you know, there's a sidekick character that's more of a support character, but it's patterned after Joe Hardy, the younger brother.
Okay.
There's the Joker character, patterned after Chet Morton, who's a practical Joker, but not very brave and not very athletic. So, you know, that you can have a bunch of different archetypes with different ways of contributing. So everybody has those ways to shine and those moments in the story where they get to move things forward in a unique way. Just like in the books.
Right.
You know, it
Right.
wasn't just Frank and Joe. It was Frank and Joe and all their friends. You know, and certainly their girlfriends came into play as well sometimes. Not a lot, because they didn't really, they stayed away from the whole romance aspect
Right.
of anything, because they were for kids.
Yeah, the kids kind of
But-
series for sure.
But those characters were viable and they were developed.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And they contributed in meaningful ways. So there's, you know, there's the romantic interest, and there's the caretaker. So there's these archetypes that are in there based on them, and they question things and they move things along by through support or through getting you to reconsider what you're thinking. So there's 9 different archetypes, and so far it's working really well. I had 4 on Friday night. I had 5 in the other playtest, and it just everything moves along fantastically. People are laughing because it's silly, it's campy, it's funny, right?
Right. Yeah, for sure. And it's a very welcoming setting. You know, it's not a Warhammer 40K group.
No, it's
you know,
not.
It's the other end of the spectrum. It's warm. It's inviting. It's I would say it's kind of the coffee, the warm cup of coffee or warm cup of tea style.
It's comfort
game.
food. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
comfort food role playing, but with like nefarious characters, ne'er-do-wells in your small city of 50,000 people that you have to. And of course, the police are completely incompetent. So you need the sleuths, the kid sleuths, to get involved and solve the
Right.
mystery with their plucky know-how, can-do attitudes.
So kind of now moving on a little bit from
Sure.
the Hardy Boys thing that you have going, and I'm really excited to hear about how you developed this and the structure that you put into it. I can't wait to hear more about the development as it continues.
Well, I mean, it's playtest, rewrite, playtest, rewrite. Like, that's how it works.
Yeah,
Keep
iterate.
trying things, listen to people, keep improving it, you know. Look for those things where you're being tripped up and just keep tightening everything up.
Apparently, General Nutt's daughter and boyfriend cannot stop talking about the Hardy Boys game.
They were
he's
in the game,
he's
yeah.
in the chat. He's in the
Fantastic,
chat.
hey.
They're really looking forward to the PDF and they want to run it.
Yes, that's fantastic.
If that doesn't say something about this, I don't know what will.
You know,
That's very cool.
it's the first time I playtest publicly, like out in the world, like not in my house.
Just-
And the feedback at the con, I was hearing about it, you know, yesterday still, because I ran on Friday night. I'm hearing about it Saturday night. I'm hearing about it this morning, how much fun people had. And it was just like, I'm hearing about it now. So it's very validating, certainly,
Yeah.
to know that I'm on the right track and I'm hitting that right feel, and that people are really enjoying it. Because I mean, you want to make a good game. Otherwise,
Right.
why make a game?
And you know, you pour a lot of energy into into whatever you're producing, and you that validation point where you can get some of that is, oh man, it's crucial to refill that rocket. Painting a model
Yep.
and sitting here alone is really tough at times, but then when you get an awesome community that comes in and they're like,
Yeah.
man, the hair on that is just awesome.
Exactly.
And like, refilling that rocket to keep going, to do it, to push yourself to just write up the next paragraph and then redo it
Rip
six
that
times.
up and
right.
get it just right, and
Yeah.
keep pushing and
Yeah.
keep pushing. Because I mean, like, everybody at this con has a half-finished, unpublished game, like, guaranteed. Like,
Yeah.
I've got 3 or 4. So yeah, having that energy from everybody and that feedback, like, it's just, the folks I playtested with were messaging me and going, like, before I came, they're like, hey, how did it go? They wanted to know, like, did they like it as much as we did? And it's like, oh man. So yeah, it's almost like a crusade is getting going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving away from the Hardy Boys.
Yeah,
thing,
sure.
I kind of want to talk about your blog because obviously you're going to keep developing this, and you're a lovely personality.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah,
You too.
you're a lovely personality. If if people want to dig in more into the world of Dave. You told me earlier that you have a blog.
I do.
Let's talk just a little
Yeah,
bit about
sure.
that.
It's I have a blogspot blog that I've had for a very long time. That I've been really good at, diligent about blogging on, and then not for like a couple of years, and then revisited it.
Right.
And with everything going on with the development of the game, now I have something to say again. So I'm talking about that. So searching for Magic blog. If you just Google that,
Okay.
you'll get my little blog. You'll see a little picture of me there. And
Maybe while you're talking about it, I can find it
Yeah,
and
and
share so that
that'd be
they know
great.
exactly what they're looking for.
there'll be a new post tonight, hopefully, because I have lots to talk about.
Searching for
Searching for Magic, yeah, Searching for Magic blog is his name. And because that's what I was doing when I started a lot of old school play. So very much what you see it at the con here, but I mean, we also saw a lot of newer games and more modern games, which were a lot of fun to play. And even the retro clone that we were testing for Zenith Entertainment Games, or no, Zenith Entertainment Group, was like an older game, but with a really great update to it.
right. Yeah, Bear worked hard on that.
Oh, yeah.
That was like
So much fun.
I would love to give on some gas.
So what is it so what else do you like to write about? I mean, you're going to be covering your Hardy Boys stuff.
Yeah, and
Is it kind of just cabs of your experiences with role playing and stuff?
thoughts and catalogs of my role-playing experiences. Absolutely. Some reviews, some write-ups of play reports. I was playing in a Forbidden Lands campaign for a long time, and there's some talk of that in there. And Simple Math. Wow, that's role-playing games,
I'm
right?
sorry, but it sounds like it sounds like I just lost
Oh no.
lost audio for like the last like minute.
Okay.
So if you
Yeah, I
if
can.
you want to roll back, it looks like I did lose audio. Can somebody confirm that we got that back? A little bit of a technical mishap
I
there.
would like a thumbs up to know that we have audio again. Please, someone give us a thumbs up so we can proceed.
Thanks for yeah. Okay, all right. So there, it's back. It's back. All right.
So, yeah.
So you were talking about how there were studies with how kids.
Yeah, so there's lots of applications for role-playing games with children, and a lot of research on that, and how they can be used in a therapeutic way, because play therapies are so effective. But nothing with older adults. Now, I have a lot of experience working with older adults with dementia, and also my family is affected by Alzheimer's. So, as I was saying, while we had no sound, the best thing you can do to slow the onset of dementia is social activities, creative activities, and simple math. So that's basically role-playing games in a nutshell. So it's a really great tool. Now, the reason I wanted to do like a mid-century mysteries kind of thing, or the Hardy Boys, once it entered the public domain, was that people living with dementia, they slide around in their life. They move around. So
Pop up in one section of their life. And
exactly.
Then dip a little bit, come back and.
Yeah, they move around their timeline.
Yeah.
You know, and but if they lose track of what you're doing or what they're doing while you're playing, and they're like, "What are we doing?" You can say, "Oh, we're just making a Hardy Boys story. You're doing this character, this guy right here that you can see." And
That is such a cool.
and all the character sheets are 14 points, so that somebody with dementia can read them. Parts that they fill in are in their handwriting, so they can trust it. And it's so far the feedback, because I've tested with people who are familiar and also therapists. So I think it's going to be a good tool, but for it to be a good tool, it has to be a good game. Lots of people make games with ideas of what to do with them later, and they don't make good games. So step one, make a good game, and once that's done, then see if I can use it as a tool as an early intervention with dementia. So that's the end goal. So if I can get a nice big print run, fantastic. I can use it, and we'll see. But in the meantime, gotta make a great game.
Right. Well, you guys, you heard it here, Dave. I think you've got some fire on your hands with this.
Thanks.
It's kind of cool because it's already a known IP, very wide.
Yeah.
And I think I can't be the only one watching that says I'm just a little bit eager to get more tastes along the way, and I'll definitely be checking in on your blog.
Well, it's certainly General Nut and his friends that he brought to the con are chomping at the bit. I had promised all
Delightful
my
time with those guys, man.
yeah.
They were fantastic.
so much fun. Yeah, and so I promised all my playtesters copies, like PDF copies. So that's why they were like, we can't wait to get it and run it. It's like, okay, yeah, as soon as I can get layout and art. But
Well, hey, there's illustrators back here. And
yeah, I've got an illustrator at home that's
Okay.
really good with line art, my daughter. So I'm going to be working with her. She's a genius. Like, she's so good. And
What a
she's,
better way to connect to.
well, that's it, right? Like, multiple generations of people who are connected to the material. And I used to read the books to my kids. I can remember reading like a Nancy Drew story to my daughter, and I had to stop and explain how the phone lines could be out.
Right.
Right? And that's part of the appeal of playing in these times and playing mysteries, is that you have these restrictions on the communication and getting information. So you actually have to go out and do stuff. You can't just Google it. So it's...
You gotta go to the library if you
yeah.
want information. or
Exactly.
You gotta go to the newspaper if you want to see the archive.
Oh, yeah. So that's exactly it. So, part of that experience builds into this as well.
Okay. Well, Dave, I think I'm gonna wrap up the interview.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
for the time and talking. We didn't even talk about the game that we played.
That's true. Okay, let's take 5 minutes. And
Okay.
let's talk about like, I'll set the stage real quick. So we ran through a game called Heroic by Bear and Zeg Media Group.
Yeah, so Zenith Entertainment Group.
Zenith Entertainment Group. Yes. So you go with that one. Zenith
Yeah.
Entertainment Group. He's had it on Kickstarter. I think it's closed now.
It is, but they're
but-
close to getting it out.
Yeah, so you can get a final print or a final release from them, but we got to play it here at the convention. It was kind of it was a superhero based game.
Comic book fun.
Yeah, comic book fun indeed. And you played the kind of magic user.
Yeah, I played a magic-y character whose powers come from magical stones that allow them to control the elements, and you were like a flamey guy.
Yeah, I was what was that? Blazeheart. Blazeheart kind of reminds me of some pyromancer kind of guy.
Exactly.
With and he was, believe it or not, a firefighter. So
Well, he doesn't have to worry about fire. He's immune to it.
right. And I had a wonderful time playing him. And the beginning of the scenario, kind of everybody was doing their thing in the big capital city, and there was it's kind of like Halloween time, so there was going to be a public event going on. And the storm rolls in. We end up seeing a flash of lightning, and the cops say, "Oh, there's trouble going on. There's things coming out of the ground." Blah blah blah. Eventually, we all kind of start to converge on this park, and start duking it out. And I think you got in there earlier than I did.
No, you were in there earlier than I was, or like it was about almost the same because we were moving. We were moving pretty quick to get in. But what I loved was you had never played anything like this before, right?
No.
No, right. And I had actually played the game that inspired this from the 1980s, Marvel.
The
They call
original
it
one
the
that he was
original
showing the box
Marvel
of?
superheroes. Yeah,
Okay.
I played a ton of that back in the day, and even had played like a few years ago. I played in a short campaign of it because it holds up. It's a well-designed system.
Yeah.
And what he did was take that and improve it and modernize it so that it's much tighter and has better flow and is more flexible. And but both of us coming in, me with a ton of experience, you coming in with none, and we both had a blast. And you were the most valuable player by the whole group at the table because of the wisecracks and the smart action.
Well, I mean, I kind of just put my head in that comic book superhero mode and kind of just followed the flow of it,
Oh, yeah, what would Peter Parker do?
If you jump in front of the giant skeleton, evil big bad guy, or not skeleton, but pumpkin,
Yes.
jack-o'-lantern, big bad guy, you got to make something about a pumpkin and put it in there. And so I was gonna try and roast him and say, oh yeah, what did I use?
Toasted pumpkin seeds.
Yeah, I'm the boy that's gonna toast your pumpkin seeds. And then action happened from there.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
there was
Bedlam happened from there.
so many awesome moments. The you put up a whirlwind kind of cone, whirlwind around these the bad guys so that they couldn't hurt the general public.
Yeah.
Another guy put up another barrier, like telekinetic or some kind of barrier to keep all of the smaller swarms of minions off of the general public.
Yeah.
It just felt like that could be produced into an issue.
Or like
book or something.
the first Avengers movie, right? Like with the city going crazy with all the stuff in it, and it's like, okay, let's contain this.
Right.
Most of them were doing containment. There was only one actually taking care of the big bads.
And just classic superhero action everywhere.
And
Gauntlet
superhero
smash
punch, yes.
things going on, like just pure nostalgia kind of stuff.
But so good times, and certainly, that's the beauty of a con like this, where everybody's welcome. Doesn't matter your experience level, you can jump in on a game. most people are knowing that they're going to be running games for people who haven't played it before, and they come prepared and they come with a great attitude. So fantastic! Like if you can get to Clericon, and the person who came from the farthest away, we came from like Birmingham, England. So like if you can make it here, it's worth coming, even though it was only like what 40 some people.
Yeah, well, it was 50 and some change.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, so well, I think with that we're gonna go ahead and wrap up because it looks like everything else in here is like totally
I know
taken
everybody's
down.
leaving. I'm like
Oh,
waving
man.
at people as they
Really?
go because it's like, oh man, I wanted to talk to them before they.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us here for the live stream, and the thank you David for coming over and taking an interview.
Well, thanks for doing all the tech stuff for the live stream, for the panel, and all the rest of it, and for playing. Because man, you made that game. That was so much fun. Thanks, Bill.
Hey, thank you very much.
All
We
right.
look forward to everything you got in store. So.
Awesome.
All right. Take